Today we're going to talk about how to create a multi-branch pipeline in Jenkins using GitLab. Are you new here? If you are, welcome. And if you are new here, you don't know who I am. My name is Darren Pope, and I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. In the past, when you were creating pipelines for GitLab projects, anytime you created a new branch, you would have to create a new pipeline job. With a multi-branch pipeline, all of that is now in the past. Let's talk about the tooling that we're going to be using today. I have a Jenkins controller that is running version 2.277.1. When it was installed using install suggested plugins. And at the end of that, once we logged in, I also installed the GitLab Branch Source plugin. And the version of that plugin at the time of this recording is 1.5.4. If you want to be able to do multi-branch pipelines with GitLab, GitLab Branch Source currently is your only option. I also have an agent connected to this controller with a label of Linux, and I also have a tunnel set up via ngrok so I can receive webhooks from GitLab.com. Now you might be using self-hosted GitLab. All of these setup steps should be the same, but if not, be sure to refer to the documentation for the GitLab Branch Source plugin. The link for that documentation is listed below this video. And as we get started, taking a look at my account within GitLab, I have two projects. I have a Micro 1 project and a Micro 2 project. In today's video, we're only using the Micro 1 project. If we take a look at it, all that exists in here right now is a README file. There's no Jenkinsfile or anything else, just a README file. The first thing that we're going to need to do is to create a couple of credentials within GitLab. We're going to need to create a personal access token, and we're also going to need to set up an SSH key so we'll be able to check out this repository. The Micro 1 repository is a private repository. So to do this, we'll go up to my icon, we'll click on Edit Profile, and I am going to click on Access Tokens. I'm going to give it a name of Jenkins-Darren Pope. I'm going to let it expire on this Friday. And according to the documentation for the GitLab Branch Source plugin, the only scope that we need to add is API. So we'll select API and then click on Create Personal Access Token. The access token will render at the top, so I'm going to copy that and save that for later usage. The other thing that we need to set up is an SSH key. So while we're still here in our user settings, we're going to go to SSH keys, and we need to add in the public key of a SSH key pair. So I've already created one off to the side, so I'm going to copy in my public key. So we'll come back over here, and I have now pasted in my public key. I'm also going to expire this on the 26th. You may not want to expire things, that's up to you. Let's click on Add Key, and we can double check that by scrolling down and see that we have our SSH key here. So now that we've created our personal access token and our SSH key, or at least the public side of it, let's go into our controller and let's create our credentials. So we'll go to Manage Jenkins, Manage Credentials, Global, and then Add Credentials. For the GitLab Personal Access Token, we are going to use a credential type of GitLab Personal Access Token. So the token value is going to be the value of the token that was generated for us. And I'm going to give it an ID of Jenkins-Darren Pope. Name the same as what the personal access token is. That's purely by coincidence, but it helps me keep things straight. We'll click on OK. The second credential that we need to add is an SSH username with private key. Now in this case, I'm going to give it an ID of Darren Pope-SSH Key. I'm going to give it the same description. The username is going to be the username of GitLab that I'm logging in with. So in my case, that is Darren Pope. And then the private key is going to come from the private key that I had generated from the key pair. Okay, I've copied that, and let me paste that in. So there is my private key. And my SSH key pair does not have a passphrase, or the private key doesn't have a passphrase. So we'll click OK. So what we've done so far is we've created our personal access token and the public side of the SSH key over on GitLab. We've now created within our controller a GitHub personal access token and an SSH user with a private key. Before we can create our job, we need to do one more thing. We'll go back to Dashboard, Manage Jenkins, and Configure System. This last thing that we need to create is we need to set up our GitLab configuration with the credentials so it can manage our webhooks for us. So as you scroll down Configure System, you'll see GitLab and then GitLab servers. By default, there is a default one here, but it's pretty empty. So we'll say credentials, and we'll select our GitLab personal access token that we set up. We're going to check Manage Webhooks. We are not going to check the Manage System Hooks. I don't care about system hooks for today. We don't need to do anything with secret token, but the root URL for hooks, even though we don't really need to set it up, just for clarity, I'm going to set it to the value of our Jenkins location URL. This ngrok URL is already set up above, but I'm doing it here just to be redundant and for clarity. Now that we've done that, let's click on Test Connection. And what this tells us is that the credentials are verified for user Darren Pope. This is what tells us that the GitLab Personal Access Token credential that we set up is working as expected. Let's go ahead and click on Save. Now we're ready to create our multi-branch pipeline. So we'll go to New Item. We're going to give it a name of Micro1, the same name as our GitLab project. We'll scroll down to the very bottom, at least in my case, and click on Multi-Branch Pipeline. We'll scroll down to Branch Sources and select GitLab Project. The server is the default one. This is the one that we just set up. And right now it's the only option. The checkout credentials are going to be the SSH key pair that we set up. So in this case, it's Darren Pope SSH Key. The owner is going to be the account on GitLab. So in my case, that is Darren Pope. And I'm going to tab out of this field and watch what happens inside of the projects dropdown right below. As the tab was clicked, it made a call and gave me a list of all of the projects that are available to me. Today we're doing Micro1. And at this point, we're completely set up. We don't need to make any other changes for this first part. Now you'll notice that we have just a handful of default behaviors: discover branches, that's how we'll find our branches, and we'll also be able to discover merge requests from either origin or from forks. So let's go ahead and click on Save. And let's see what happens. So we're scanning our GitLab project, and this message is a little misleading. It says Jenkinsfile found, but is a directory, not a file. So what that actually means is Jenkinsfile was not found. Because if you remember back over in our Micro1 repository, all we have right now is a README, and that's it. So this message is a little confusing. So if you see this, that basically means Jenkinsfile was not found. If we click back on Micro1 in the breadcrumb, what you're going to see is a couple of things happened. Number one is it changed to include the account name, the description of the name, which in my case is first space last name, and then a slash, and then the project name. You'll also note that this folder is empty because it wasn't able to find a Jenkins file. Going back to our log, it was looking for a file named Jenkinsfile. Where did this come from? If we go back over to Configure and scroll down below Branch Sources, we are going to see something called Build Configuration. The mode that we have selected, and it's the only mode that's available to us, is by Jenkinsfile. So what's happening is when that scan occurred, it was looking for a file named Jenkinsfile. Since there was no Jenkins file found in the root of that project, then that's why nothing was set up for us. Now that we know why the Jenkins file is important, let's go and create a Jenkins file in Micro 1. So I'm going to say vi Jenkins file, and I have a simple declarative Jenkins file. So all that this Jenkins file is going to do is it's going to run a shell step to say echo hello on our agent that has a label of Linux. This is a very, very simple pipeline. Let's go ahead and save that. We're going to add it. We're going to commit. And we're going to push. Now, one other thing that we didn't review after this was created, even though we did not have any branches found, the job was still created. So if we take a look back at Micro 1 and go over to Settings and Webhooks, we can see that a webhook was set up for us at B95, which is what our controller is. So what I expect to happen, and what should have happened when we did that push, is that the branch would be found. So we now received a webhook from GitLab. We can see that main was found. And then if we take a look at the number 1, we can see our echo hello. So the Jenkins file did exactly what we expected within the main branch. So now let's create a new branch off of main named fix123. So we'll say git checkout-b fix-123. And now we've done that. But we don't want to make any changes to this branch just yet. So let's go ahead and push this up to GitLab. So once we push that new branch up to GitLab, a webhook was fired. We're listening for it. Let's see what happened. So if we go back to Micro 1, we now see fix123 is here. And we can see that number 1 is running. If we take a look at the output, it's exactly the same output that we had for main, which is, again, what we would expect at this point because we didn't make any changes. So to recap, we now have a main branch, we have a fix123 branch, and no merge requests. Now let's make a change to the Jenkins file that is on the fix-123 branch. We're going to add in 2 new stages. We've added in a stage for fix branch. So anytime we are on a branch that begins with fix dash, we're going to cat out the contents of readme.md. Anytime we're on a branch that starts with mr dash, in our case merge requests, then it's going to echo out this only runs for the MRs. So let's go ahead and save this. Add the changes. And let's push this up and see what happens. So what we should see now is Fix 123 is currently running, or almost running. Let's see what happens. There's 2. It's doing the pull. There's our echo hello. There's the cat out of the README because we're on the Fix-123 branch. And the stage for the MRs were skipped because Fix- does not equal MR-. So this Jenkins file for this Fix branch is working as we want. Now that we've done that, let's go and create a merge request. So we'll go back over to GitLab, scroll back to the top, click on Micro 1. At the top here, we can just click on Create Merge Request. We want our changes from Fix 123 into main. We also want to delete the source branch. So in our case, Fix 123, we want that deleted when the merge request is accepted. So let's go ahead and click on Submit Merge Request. So now that we've done that, let's go back over to our controller, click on Micro 1. We still have main, we still have Fix 123, but now you'll notice that we now have a merge request, and that is MR5. Well, the 5 can be referenced here in this path. So we can see this is MR5. We take a look at MR5 and take a look at the output, then what we have here is our echo hello. Our Fix- stage is skipped, but then the MR stage does run because this branch started with MR-. Now that we've reviewed all of this, let's go back to Micro 1 and recap this one more time. We have main, Fix 123, and the MR5 merge request. Let's go ahead and merge this merge request. Also notice that we have delete source branch checked. So when we click on merge, what's going to happen is we can see that the changes were merged into main. If we go back over to our job and we click on Micro 1 here, what we're going to see is now that Fix-123 is now obsolete, as indicated by the strike through. We can also see that the merge request, MR5, is now obsolete. And if we want to clean those up instead of waiting for them to be cleaned up, we can just say scan GitLab project now. If we click back on Micro 1, what will happen is we will see now that all we have left is main, and there are no merge requests. Finally, let's take a look at main. Look at build number 2, and we can see here that we have our echo hello. We have the stage for the Fix branch was skipped because main doesn't match Fix-. We also see that the MR was skipped because main does not start with MR-. So now we have all the changes to our Jenkins file that we want on our main branch. And that's it. To recap, in order to use GitLab with a multi-branch pipeline job within Jenkins, we had to install the GitLab Branch Source plugin. And once we did that, we needed to create 2 credentials on the GitLab side, a personal access token and an SSH key because we have private repositories. Then over on our Jenkins controller, we needed to create 2 credentials, one for the personal access token and one for the private key part of our SSH credentials. And then we set up our configuration for GitLab using our personal access token so the webhooks could be managed for us. Once we did all that set up, we were able to create the multi-branch job. We went through a few scenarios to where we added a Jenkins file to a branch, we created a new branch off of that branch, we created a merge request, merged it all back together. And now you can see, instead of having to create new jobs for any time you have a new branch within a GitLab project, consider using the GitLab Branch Source plugin to simplify your work, either as a Jenkins administrator or as somebody that just has to maintain jobs. It will be a great time saver for you. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on Twitter @CloudBeesDevs. If this video was helpful to you, consider giving us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there's new content available on CloudBees TV. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.